Okay, welcome everybody. Welcome to week 7 already of Rise, the podcast. It's the weekly podcast that really intends to bring positive change to the world. The podcast that defends the small business owner, creativity, new ideas, problem solving, independent critical thinking, finding a new path and a way forward with passion and some blood, sweat, and tears that we often put in if we're an entrepreneur. Each week, we feature great guests who are making a difference for good, whether it's how we do business, whether it's leading at work, whether it's making communities stronger, eradicating poverty, or touting abundance, or new ways to heal and be healthy, or empowering youth to be all they can be, and yet learning from our elders and their wisdom. This show is a journey of ideas, solutions, and new thinking that has us create a new vision forward for where we are now and who we want to be in the future. Our guest today is the lovely Jennifer G, as it says on her YouTube picture or whatever profile, Jennifer Green. Jennifer is an international best-selling children's author, educator, mindfulness wellness specialist, a life success coach. I didn't know that, Jennifer. Advocate for the Global Green Action Project. And she helps children of all ages have less stress and anxiety and more fun through mindful and compassionate lifestyle education and implementation so that they can be more connected to the global healing and be empowered to have a more resilient, extraordinary life. Jennifer Green Blair is a certified teacher with a variety of wellness and educational qualities. She's got over 17 years experience working with all ages in the private and public education systems, and close to 20 years working in the wellness industry. In addition to her Bachelor of Education degree, she's got a degree in environmental science and liberal studies as well, with specializations in physics, biology, and has additional qualifications in language and health and children's education. Her passion is, and this is why she's here today with us, is to make the world a better place by promoting wellness, education, and mindfulness initiatives that support life on the planet. Jennifer is an advocate for the Global Green Action Project, which supports humanitarian, environmental, and animal advocacy that empower youth initiatives and expedited healing in this world through global community collaboration, mentorship, education, and awareness. Her newest book, we mentioned she's an author, is Gwendolyn Magical Gentle Dragon's Mindful Coloring Book. Welcome, Jennifer. There's the book there on screen if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening on our Mixcloud site, Jennifer's got the book proudly displayed on our call here today. So welcome. Nice to have you with us.
Thank you so much for having me here today. I'm so excited to be here with you, David.
Yeah.
There's such a great opportunity to share so much goodness with the world, our global family. So thanks for having me here.
Yeah, what a joy. It's always a joy seeing you. And so in your work, in your role teaching kids in the school system, what were you noticing in children that led you to the work you're doing now as far as mindfulness and stress goes? What were you noticing in the kids you were working with?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. For many, many years now, I've been teaching, and it's kind of the scientist in me likes to analyze things. And it's the part of the mindfulness piece for me as well. And over time, I've noticed an alarming. I mean, stress is always there; it's part of life. But as I've seen it over the years, stress has increased over time, and it seems to be across board, all ages for that matter. And particularly in the school system, when you see young children experiencing stress and exhibiting it through their behavioral issues, through their emotional issues with relationships with their friends and in their classrooms, it you really want to do more for them. You realize there's such a need to be able to support children on a greater capacity, and then it's mindful to stop, take pause, and wonder what's going on and how to support. So that's been the trend, and that's kind of where I've been coming from, is how to support that need on a greater capacity than it's been done before. Yeah.
And how long have you been noticing this? Like how many years now?
Oh, that's a great question. I have been seeing a general trend that's quite noticeable. I mean, it's always been there, but noticeable over the last 10 years. It's escalated, I would say, from my perspective.
Do you think
And I,
that's with the advent of the cell phone and the popularity of the cell phone now? Do you think that's it? Like, are young people disconnected from their body and their well-beingness and their awareness and more connected to the gadget?
that's a great question. And what I was mentioning earlier is, and I've taught all ages, right? So going back to like
Mm.
middle school, elementary, I've been, I've educated in the young ones in kindergarten. So I've had that experience and it's common throughout. And having said that, going back to your question is if there's technology influence there, I would tend to say yes. I would also tend to say that that merges into how their family dynamic plays as well. I mean, we are so much busier than ever before, and moms and dads probably find themselves on technology more so than ever as well. And so that's a compounding effect. So not only are the kids maybe exposed to more technology, but mom and dad are as well. And then putting all that together, it just creates a lot of disconnect without even realizing it. So that disconnect ultimately causes less mindfulness.
And less awareness of yourself, but also of others. So, and stress is also coming at our youth from all angles. And what's the impact of that, Jennifer, on their social life, their developmental progress, and as far as their self-esteem goes? What's the effect of stress on youth that you see, and how does it show up in these areas?
Well, it's alarming when we talk about what I'm going to go first to is that social bullying issue. Bullying has been around from since humanity's been there. There's always been that social dynamic where unfortunately humans can have a beautiful light and they can also have that darkness, and then that bullying comes in there. And having said that, when children are growing up, bullying is particularly challenging. It can be really, really detrimental to a child's well-being, mentally, physically, spiritually, and so on. And as a result, we all have heard of those really scary stories where children have harmed themselves as a result of that social bullying. And some children have unfortunately harmed themselves to the point of suicide. And having said that, my experience is I have actually taught children in the past that have tried to commit suicide, even in grade 5. That's young. And
Mm-hmm.
that's, that my experience again, it's been related to that social bullying. Having said that, technology is a powerful tool put into a child's hands, and children are very technological savvy, more so than many parents, many
Mm-hmm.
adults are. They pick it up so fast. And
I had a meltdown with Lego, so you imagine me with technology.
I think we could all relate at some point,
Mm-hmm.
right? A lot of us have technological challenges, and it's technology is advancing so quickly, so it's hard to keep up. But children have this innate ability to keep up because that's just the era they're living in, and they're able to adapt, which is one of the beautiful parts of resiliency with children. So going back to the idea though is that them being so savvy and clever, and adults not necessarily being able to keep up, there can be again a disconnect. And if children aren't honed in the right direction, unknowingly they could be harming each other through this social bullying concept, which can lead to these drastic situations. So it's really, really key to nurture children in the right path in terms of compassionate living, mindful living, mindfulness in their lives, but also to give them support when it comes to how to use technology in a kind, compassionate way, so that they have a tool in their hands that they can use for good rather than for for
For
not so
evil.
good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So when you teach, kids and youth, when you introduce this mindfulness and maybe meditation, what results do you see in the class? And how long into the practice of mindfulness, meditation, breath work do you begin to see results happen, Jennifer?
Oh, it's very quick. And again,
Mm.
this is not, this is for children of any age.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's powerful for anyone. And I just kind of want to go back a little bit to describing what mindfulness is before I go any
Hmm.
further.
Yeah.
As some people might not fully understand what it is, they might have a misconception. Is that okay if I just kind of
Yes,
delve into that first?
please. I was thinking of doing a definition of it, but go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Well, you can elaborate, please do.
No, no,
I'm
you go.
I'm
You're
just
the
gonna
expert.
really really short. I just wanted to explain that mindfulness is simply taking a moment, taking pause in whatever situation you're in, whether it's good or bad, and just being able to stop and observe and notice the internal reaction as well as the external reaction, and giving it compassion, giving yourself compassion in that moment, and giving the situation compassion. And that ability to be able to be sort of almost like that scientist, that observer, allows you to take those moments and just be able to make the best decisions possible, to be able to find your center, to be able to be resilient during all kinds of challenges during, and it doesn't have to be a challenge, it's a practice. It allows you just to be able to be in the moment, which fosters an overall sense of well-being in all capacities of your health. So that's mind, body, spirit in community. So that's kind of my little summary of what mindfulness is. Please
Yeah.
do elaborate. It's a
Oh, well, to
wonderful.
me, it's like, almost taking that time to pause when you feel a little bit stressed or pressured or confronted or triggered, and just sort of breathing, letting go of any angst or anxiety that you might be experiencing as a result, and then just sort of, as you said, centering yourself and thinking, okay, what's next in this moment, right? Because it's all we have, and choosing to either take action or just let go for now and come at it later, right? What's your take on that?
No, that's exactly it. It allows you to just take that moment so that you can just breathe, which I'm all about, just breathe. And it allows you to reconnect with your inner self, your intuition, which is your guiding light in terms of making your best decisions, which is a way to get yourself out of that fight or flight and into more of that rest and digest mode, that state where you make your best decisions, where you're able to just be and really connect with who you are, right? So
Right.
yeah.
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 I had a, yeah, I had an incident in the summer that I was really, I got really upset and anxious over it. And then I just, I stopped and went, well, what can I do now? Nothing. Can I do it later? Yeah. Is there a time frame? Nope. Okay. There's my answer, right? So, okay, I was building an IKEA bed frame, and as I was moving it and shifting it in my room, it came apart, and I spent all day. It was a hot summer day in August, and it came apart, and I went, and I was just, I worked on it all day. I was dripping, sweating because it was so hot, and I had to set up my fold-out couch and sleep on the couch that night. And I went, just let it go, let it go, and I didn't get to fix it for a few weeks because I just didn't feel moved or inspired to. And I said, just focus on what you need to. So it was like is that an example of mindfulness too?
Oh, that's a great example of it. And realizing it's like that old saying, right? Don't sweat the small stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Often we get so caught up in the busy or things that we think are going to be so life transforming, but really they're not. They're little things when we look at the
Mm-hmm.
grand picture.
Yeah.
And yeah, why create all those negative cortisol, all the negative hormones like cortisol in our body that can cause all kinds of health concerns when we really, it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things.
No.
So mindfulness really supports, that health aspect, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And it felt good just to let go. And boy, did I sleep like a baby on the fold-out couch that night. But anyway, what can parents do to help their children manage stress and also to be able to ground and center themselves? What can parents do? Can they take an active role here?
They can, and then kind of going back to the other question because it's going to tie into, so actually I'm going to answer you in a way that helps with the other question in this one. It's sort of overall. So youth can help themselves by just simply remembering to stop and take pause and take 5 or more breaths. So the powerful healing breath is something that a youth can easily take with them no matter where they are. And whenever they're feeling anxious or stressed, or feeling unwell, or feeling like there's an issue, a concern, and they can just stop and take a moment just to really connect with their breath will make a huge difference. Now, parents can support that by doing this in family, in community. And a really great practice that parents can use is to make a routine out of it. So take time and plug into your daily schedule, your weekly schedule, time with your family where you can nurture these mindful practices. Mindful practices vary. There are so many things we can do, but connecting with the powerful healing breath is a powerful tool that you can teach your children at any age, and it will benefit you when you practice with them. So it's really much more powerful and impactful when it comes to family working together on mindfulness practice, right? It's that whole being the example, and you don't even have to say anything. Eventually, the children will just they'll start to emulate. They'll start to practice what you're doing because you're practicing it as well, and they'll feel the benefits. So a really good way to incorporate that breath work, for instance, is taking them outdoors, having a fun family activity, and saying, hey, let's just take a moment and let's just take 3 or 5 breaths together and have fun with it. Make it a fun experience. Joy and laughter is part of that mindfulness practice as well. So the more you can laugh with your children, the more you can find time where you're having joyful experiences, you're building that meaningful relationship with your children. And that's what helps your children also in terms of having a mindful, healthy life, because they feel truly connected and grounded. And so when there is an issue, they're going to come to mom and dad and say, Mom, I'm not feeling so good, or Dad, I need some support. And that's really key too, to helping them have their most resilient and happy life.
Yeah. If you had a dream, would you like to see parents and children have maybe a healing morning a week, at home? And then what elements or tools would go into that healing mindfulness practice? You mentioned a few already: laughter, nature, breath work. But what elements would go into a family home healing morning retreat?
Oh, I love that. And I highly encourage it. A lot of families are super busy. They've got a schedule so
Mhm.
packed with so much stuff. And to be honest with you, that's one of the reasons we are disconnected, because sometimes we put too much into I'm going to call it, into the lunch bag. You put too much, what happens to the bag? It explodes, right? It falls apart. So one of the things that parents can do to have that healing retreat on a regular basis is to actually look at their schedule and see if they can actually eliminate something that's not serving them, right? Like, look at the schedule and say, hey, do we really need to do this? Is this really helping our child, or is it creating anxiety in his life or her life? Or is it disrupting our family time? If that's the case, maybe we can do something different. Maybe we can spend more time together doing something that's more meaningful. So it really starts with just kind of looking at your present schedule, your lifestyle, and just tweaking it. And it doesn't have to be a huge thing. Even just tweaking it by like 5 or 10 minutes a day can make a huge difference in creating that space where then you can sit down with your children, perhaps spend time just meditating. Is a tough one, especially when you start to have youth wanting to be doing other activities, and sometimes they don't want to spend so much time with mom and dad. So I wouldn't go to meditating right away. If this is something new for a family, it would be more things like going out in nature, as I mentioned earlier, spending time outdoors, because being outdoors is just naturally healing, and it engages the senses. And when you engage as many senses as you can, like the sight, the hearing, the smell, the touch, those are examples, then your children just naturally get into a state of mindfulness. So without having to preach to them or teach them, they're just immersing themselves in a mindful moment. That's the key, is to find ways to immerse yourself with your children in mindful moments. So why not go for a walk outdoors in the morning, and then again incorporate that healing breath that we spoke of earlier. Say, hey, let's just take a moment and let's look at the clouds. What do you see in the clouds? I like the background here because it kind of reminds you of the clouds, my
Yeah.
background.
Yeah.
And So if you imagine, if you're taking your children for a walk, why not just take a moment and just say, hey, let's just take pause. Let's look up in the sky, if it's a blue sky with clouds, for instance, and say, what do you see in the clouds? Let's use our imagination. What shapes, what can you share with me? Like, do you see a flying bird in the clouds, or do you see a balloon shape in the cloud? Using the imagination, engaging it with nature experience. These are mindful moments, and you can have a lot of fun. You're engaging the creative part that children love. It's fun, it's playful. So those are some examples. Going out in nature, going for walks, having picnics with your children. Now you're engaging the sense of food, and then being mindful when they're eating. So, it can turn it into a game. Say, let's see how long it takes to really chew on this food. What does it really taste like? So instead of just chewing and swallowing, let's just slow it down. And then you can discuss, once the food is gone, you can discuss what that experience is like. What was it like to taste that food? Was it good? Did you like it? What else would you like to try? How is the sensation of eating a strawberry different than maybe eating a banana, right? Like the textures are different, the smells are different. So a picnic can be turned into a mindful moment as well. And then of course there's the coloring, like my coloring book. You can do arts and crafts with your children. Coloring is an experience. Why not take a big chart of paper and have everybody in the family be part of creating some artwork? So, your child, your youth can be part of writing graffiti on the paper. Why not do a graffiti moment, right? How fun is
Yeah.
that? Kids love that. Youth love that.
Yeah. No lack of ideas. This is good. I want to just shift gears a little bit, okay? Because you're doing some really remarkable work. And you're a woman that's really committed to positive change on the planet. Where did you get this drive to do good, and who inspired you to do the work you're doing today?
You're gonna make me cry. That's a really powerful question. There are a lot of amazing leaders in the world that have really influenced me. One of the most powerful have been, there's a few. I've been very fortunate in my life. As I said, it's very meaningful. This question is very deep. My grandmother, who passed at 92 a few years back, was one of those main influential leaders, role models in my life. To the day, a few weeks prior to her death, she was still out there saving animals in her local community. Out there, even though she had issues with her hips and knees, she got outside and she was helping the stray animals that people had abandoned. And she had created this shelter for them in the winter, and she would feed them. She was living on such low income, like she barely had any money for herself, and she would use whatever she had left. So I told you, you're gonna make me cry. And she would go out there and help the needy, the animals that needed it because they had been forgotten, and she refused to let them be forgotten. So my grandmother was one of those amazing heroes. And sorry, warned you.
Okay. Okay.
And my father
I'm
and
with
my
you.
mother, my father and my mother were influential. And I grew up, I was very fortunate. We went through ups and downs. There was a period of time where we were in poverty. And nonetheless, even in poverty, my mom and dad gave us mindful, meaningful moments where even when we had very little, they would still find an opportunity to take us out in nature. And I remember one of the most meaningful moments was when we'd have a picnic near the lake. And even though we had little food, we would sit there at the lake, and my mom and dad would give us such great joy. My little brother, and I, and we would be able to have these beautiful moments playing in the sand, going for a swim, and knowing that our parents were there to support us even during these challenging times. So these are just some examples. I've been really fortunate. I mean, my grandfather was another one. And of course, there are, common leaders out there. One of, most recent influences in my life are the youth that I've been exposed and honored to be able to help and support. I exposed to their wonderful words of wisdom, because that old saying about knowledge and learning comes from the mouths of babes is so true.
Yeah.
So true.
So I want to talk to about the books a bit. So, oh, is there anybody else that inspires you?
Well, I was going to mention like a beautiful Greta who's out there in the world doing great things and inspiring her youth colleagues and friends in the world. You know, she's out there, you know, persevering. And of course, Jane Goodall is one of my all-time favorites as well, who's doing great things. And she, you know, I'm talking about different age groups here. Greta's a youth, and yet Jane Goodall is like almost, I believe, 80, you know, and look at her out there in the world. So, you know, leaders in the world, it doesn't matter how old you are, doesn't matter where you come from, you can always make great changes. And these are people that inspire me because of where they come from and how old they are. And it's just heart, right? It's all heart and passion for helping support our world in the most amazing ways.
Yeah. And that's what your books do. The latest being what you have there, Gwendolyn's Magical Gentle Dragons, Mindfulness coloring book. What would you love to see happen with this book, especially in getting it into the hands of schools, community centers, and maybe the social services sector? What would you like to see happen?
I would love to be able, so this is a companion book. So I would
Mm-hmm.
love to be able to provide resources that support all children in our global family. And especially during the last 2 years, I guess it's going on 2 years with all these unprecedented times that our global family has been dealing with so much more than usual. You know, this extra support is my way of being able to give children a way to find peace, more calm, find their center, have their most resilient lives. So that they can be able to share this as well with their families and you know their friends. So what I would love to see is that if, you know, my dream would be if this book as well as the first book, because they work well synergetically together, can get into the hands of as many children in the world as possible. It's such an easy, accessible tool that they can use at any point in time whenever they need, so that they can just take pause and just, you know, take a moment to go, hey, you know, life's not so bad, I can get through this, this helps remind me of this. Just gives them that extra tool that they might need, like we all need, right?
Yeah, yeah. We're with Jennifer Green. She's joining us from her home office in Brampton today. And we're talking about schools. Do you see a day where what you're teaching becomes more mainstream and it is part of the curriculum? And if not, then what needs to happen to make the shift to include the teachings that you're talking about, that you've written about and showcase in your newest book or your both books? What needs to happen to make that shift to include this kind of learning in day-to-day studies?
It's a great, powerful question. And it's something that I think that is an ongoing process. However, having said that, I know that from my experience and my communication with other educators is that more and more educators are realizing what I've already, you know, mentioned, is that, you know, there is this escalating need for mindfulness in the schools. And, you know, it comes a lot from the fact that there's so much demand on curriculum. So there's so much expectation. We talked about the busy, right? Families have this action-packed schedule on their to-do list all for the day and for the week. The same problem occurs in our schools. There's so much that needs to be packed into a short day so the kids can get all the curriculum met, you know, for report cards and so on. And this can be very daunting for teachers, you know, when they want to be able to just simply help support children just feel better. And it's you still need to get language in there, you know, these subjects, right? And so it's really key to be able to see how we can integrate mindfulness strategies into the day to day. And in fact, that's what I've done over the years with my teaching, is that I actually developed a really neat system that integrates mindfulness throughout the teaching, the lesson plans and so on, where kids don't even realize they're being exposed to mindfulness consistently. So it's seamless is the word that I'm looking for here. And it allows children to be mindful and then take that mindfulness into their day wherever they might be outside of the school as well. So that often I've had the experience where children will come back and say, hey, I really like that, and I taught it to my sibling, or I taught it to mom the other day, and now we're using it at home. So it's a wonderful domino effect of a more compassionate way of being. And it's so powerful when children become the educators themselves and they're teaching others to live a more compassionate, mindful life. Isn't that amazing, right?
Yeah. And so it's happening. And I'm going to refer to an organization in Baltimore, Maryland, called the Holistic Life Foundation. I encourage you, Jennifer, to get in touch with them, actually. And it's headed up by three men, well, two with a past history, or three men with a past history. And they go into schools at high risk neighborhoods and they teach what you're teaching. And it's brothers Ali and Atman Smith. And then they met Andres Gonzalez at the University of Maryland, College Park. And there's a big need in Baltimore because growing up in urban communities such as East or West Baltimore, they're characterized by having very few resources at schools and in the community. High rates of unemployment, homelessness, crime, living in urban poverty, right? Exposure to crime and violence on a daily basis, particularly for adolescents, people you're teaching and working with. A growing body of research has documented that children and adolescents who grow up in poor neighborhoods do less well on a range of developmental outcomes, social, emotional, cognitive, and the traumatic and stressful experiences that may range from major life events, child abuse, divorce, chronic interpersonal stress, family conflict, daily hassles like no money for transportation, have been established as risk factors for a range of psychological problems, internalizing as well as externalizing, and the risk of academic failure, school dropout, psychological problems, school bullying, as you alluded to, and aggression in response to the exposure of traumatizing events is significantly higher to youth growing up in high income neighborhoods. So when they compare the two neighborhoods, there's a big shift. And this is what people say about this program, the Holistic Life Foundation. They've been going into schools teaching yoga, breathwork, and mindfulness. And Congressman Tim Ryan in Baltimore says, the kids are changing before their very eyes. And Baltimore is a better city because of their work. These are the three gentlemen, right? And knowing how yoga has helped me synchronize my mind and body and build resiliency, when I saw young inner city Baltimore youth sitting on yoga mats practicing mindfulness, I immediately wanted to see that in cities across the nation. And this is a fifth grade student, okay? And she was in the mindfulness program at school. Sometimes when I get mad, I just breathe deep. I just like I picture me being in that certain place and I just thought I could overcome everybody, and then I stopped being mad. I think of being a bigger person doing something maybe a wise man would do. I think of something that a mentally stronger person would do. And that was from a young girl, fifth grade student. So are you surprised by those results? Because this organization is like, I think it's amazing. And I love to see more of it here.
Not surprised at all. You're just affirming what I've seen time and time again in my classrooms and other classrooms that educators implement mindfulness in. It's a beautiful, powerful tool that children just naturally gravitate for, or to, I should say. It's who we are, and it's interesting when you give children a chance to just be. They become the teachers, and adults sitting back, parents, educators, mentors. When we sit back and we let children be, and you give them these skills, they shine, they flourish, they start nurturing each other in this amazing compassionate community in our classrooms. And I've seen it, and I've seen it where, especially at the beginning of the year when you're starting to, you have a whole bunch of new little bodies coming to know each other, and there's this whole adjustment period. And when you start incorporating mindfulness in there and showing them how to interact on a deep level with each other in a kind, compassionate way through mindfulness, you see it grow and flourish over time. And it's amazing when you look at point A where they start, and at the end of the year where they have become, like where they go to, like what the community has become. It's incredibly uplifting and inspiring. And it's, this is why it works. And I think back to, I I think back to, like the amazing stories that children like this one, they
Yeah,
children
five,
tell me.
grade five. So what is she, like 10 maybe? And she's
Yeah, yeah.
managing to overcome her fear and stress.
That's huge. And
Yeah.
there's so much studies out there that talks about, and there's still, ongoing studies that show that, you know, some people will say that about 90% of health related issues are all stemming from stress. Like that's huge. If you're able to mitigate stress, teach children how to mitigate stress in their lives. Think about how, we're talking about physical health as well as mental health here, how much healthier they will be in terms of their longevity, in terms of their relationships. It just seeps into everything in their lives. They just have a much more joyful, happy, resilient life overall.
I got to be mindful of the time. So I got a few questions up for you. Okay. And I think you'll like this one. I thought you'd like that story. I really encourage you to get in touch. It's called the Holistic Life Foundation in Baltimore. So people watching, just Google it. And there's an organization in Toronto too. I think it's called the New Leaf Foundation, and they're doing very similar work. So Jennifer, if you were to wave your magic wand, what does the future that you want to see happen with respect to the work you're doing look like 1 to 3 years from now?
Well, as you know, I'm a big component of the initiative I started, which is the Global Green Action Project. And that's a place where it's a place to mentor and inspire youth and global family through environmental, animal, and humanitarian initiatives. So if I were to be able to look down the road, I would hope that there would be more community involvement in terms of bringing mindfulness into action, so that it's one piece is to be able to identify and learn about your feelings and become really good at that, and then bring it into your immediate community, whether that's your family or your classroom. It's a whole new amazing dynamic when you're able to spread it out further into the world, right? And we're talking, in this day and age, we can reach out globally. We can get on to technology and reach out to classrooms across the world, for example. So my vision is to be able to show and show these strategies in a way that they can be implemented into action on a much grander scale, to empower youth, to empower mentors, educators, and parents, so that they can take action into these amazing initiatives, be part of these initiatives on a much grander scale, so that the action is taking place mindfully, and we're making these amazing changes to help the world through these through these humanitarian, animal, and environmental initiatives in a
And
way
and
that
and, and
it's
personal initiatives too, right? Because
yeah.
yeah, we're flush out of time. Where do we connect with you to learn more? So little shameless self-promotion time.
Well, we can go on to Amazon for my book. So on Amazon, you'll find my two books. Actually, the first book was a #1 international best-selling book, so it's very popular. So you can actually just Google Gwendolyn, the Magical Gentle Dragons Mindful Coloring Book, and you'll find it. And the other book is called Breathe Like Gwendolyn, the Magical Gentle Dragon, How to Use Your Powerful Healing Breath to Help Stress Disappear. So they're both on Amazon. You can also find me on Instagram, Facebook, Jay Green. Author Jay Green is my, I guess they call it my handle, my name. So you can easily find me there as well. I've got a great Facebook community called the De-Stress Community, so you can join for free. Lots of great things that we can do. And you can find me in your wonderful Facebook group as well. And I'm so honored to be able to serve the
Yeah, every Sunday you're a great contributor. I want to thank you for this, Jennifer. You've been a great guest and so gracious as always. And for you watching and listening, I want to thank you. Thanks for being part of Rise, the podcast. Our goal is to inspire individuals like you to rise up. And then Rise stands for Rise Up, Inspire, and Impact. Be socially aware, that's the S, and continue the entrepreneurial spirit, that's the E in Rise, to make life and the world a better place. And join us next week as we bring in business coach and teacher and intuitive Colleen, and an author too, Colleen Lindbergh. as to what it means to be aligned to your business and to your business vision and goals. What's alignment look like? What is that all about? And how does that impact your venture in profound ways? Until then, I'm your host, David Cohen. Until next week, rise up, everybody.